Time travel has been prevalent throughout the Zelda series. Ocarina of Time, it was in the title. Majora's Mask, it was in the gameplay. Skyward Sword, it was in the story. So it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that there might be some level of time travel in Tears of the Kingdom. We've speculated that there could be something big with Recall, but with the most recent trailer, it seems like time travel might go well beyond that. How exactly? Well, that's what we're talking about today.
Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andres Restart, and today we're talking about time travel in Tears of the Kingdom. But before we jump into things, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 25,000 subscribers by the time Tears of the Kingdom comes out on May 12th. So if you enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, because then we might just make it. Right now, the hot topic amongst the entire Zelda community seems to be about time travel in Tears of the Kingdom. There are all sorts of ideas and theories bouncing around. But what I want to focus on first is Recall, because this is something that we talked about having to do with time travel for some time already. Recall is one of the 4 abilities Link gets from the beginning of the game from what we understand. And this ability can reverse the trajectory of objects that are thrown at Link. It can also reverse the trajectory of items that we throw. We learned that from the website. And it can also reverse objects that have fallen from the sky. And given that it goes black and white, it's been speculated that this might literally be some form of time reversal, reversing the history of particular objects. And this idea is further supported when we see Link using Recall on the Master Sword from prior footage. But I also think it's important to note that unlike Link's other abilities that are all depicted with a green energy, Recall is depicted with a yellow energy, and whenever we use it, there's a bit of gold particles that come from it at the end. I think Recall is going to be playing a vital role to Tears of the Kingdom, and I have some theories here that make some level of sense, I think. So there's also this motif of restoration in Tears of the Kingdom. We know at the end of Breath of the Wild, Zelda talks about restoring Hyrule perhaps beyond its former glory. And Nintendo at one point also had this big idea with the Tarrey Town quest. At one point they were going to make it a lot bigger than what it was. So considering that Tears of the Kingdom is in part made from a whole bunch of leftover ideas, it wouldn't be a stretch to think that there's going to be this grand effort to restore Hyrule. And when we consider that we've actually seen a lot of houses and foundations for houses throughout all the footage, this theory is heavily supported. So what if Link can use Recall to restore not just small objects, but potentially bigger objects like houses and such? We've even theorized that maybe Link might even be able to reverse the time of some of the destroyed or fossilized constructs, kind of like when you're in Skyward Sword and you hit a timeshift stone which brings back to life an ancient robot, which is very much like a construct, potentially linking both Skyward Sword and Tears of the Kingdom just a little bit more. So we don't know if Link can use Recall in these ways, but it's possible. Considering that we see Link using Recall in the Master Sword, it does suggest that Recall might have more applications than what's been led on so far. Which brings me to an intriguing scene we saw in the trailer, and that's when we see Link in the Hyrule Sanctum. Now, the Hyrule Sanctum is supposed to be destroyed, yet it looks completely new, and we see some gold particles. So I've wondered, could it be that Recall was just used on the Hyrule Sanctum to restore it? I think it's possible, not for sure, because the gold particles just could mean, oh, it's sparkly new, and that's all it is. It doesn't have to be a clue towards Recall having been used. But with this in mind, I think it's also important to note that this final trailer for Tears of the Kingdom is very much like the final trailer for Breath of the Wild. In length, hype, ideas, story, content, very similar. So I feel we should caution ourselves or be aware that a lot of these story scenes we saw throughout the final Breath of the Wild trailer were all flashbacks and memories, or most of them at least. So it could be that a lot of scenes we're seeing in Tears of the Kingdom trailer could also be flashbacks. Maybe not all of them, but a big part. I'm hoping that the story in Tears of the Kingdom is very linear and current, but We don't know that yet. So while I doubt that this scene in particular is a flashback because this Link here is clearly Tears of the Kingdom Link, I do think there may be other scenes in the trailer that could be flashbacks. For example, there's this one scene where we see this lady that has the same type of clothing as Zelda now, and she's using these golden powers, very much like goddess powers, like goddess Hylia powers. And she's zapping a horde of Molduga. And the reason this is a big deal is because in Breath of the Wild, there were only 4 normal Molduga, yet here we see several. So this means one of two things, I think. One, a whole bunch of new Molduga have been born in some way and brought forth maybe by Ganon. But another is that this is from the past where there were more Molduga and they were annihilated, hence why there are only 4 in Breath of the Wild. When you consider the angle of that beam she's zapping, she's not too far away from the surface, and this looks to be a Zonai structure, so this might be before the Zonai structures were sent to the sky at some point. But focusing a bit more on this lady, who is she exactly? Why is she wearing the same clothes as Zelda, and why does she have goddess-like powers? And why does she also have a yellow tear? I wonder if this lady is a prior version of Zelda that was depicted in the tapestry, the original legend of the Calamity Ganon attack. It's an interesting tale that we never got a full understanding of what happened there. There's a little bit of mystery. Maybe we're finally going to learn in Tears of the Kingdom. And I actually think I have some supporting evidence here. So I wouldn't consider this a spoiler because it's officially released by Nintendo. It's basically the back of the box art. So in Japan, they have like these digital download codes for Tears of the Kingdom. And on the back of that, again, the equivalent of the back of the box art, they show the lady again, but also that goat-like man that we also see in the trailer, except they are together and they don't look like they're in battle. It looks like they're having some sort of conversation with others. What's going on? Well, I wonder, is this goat man maybe the hero from the past and that's the character with the red hair and the weird gold-like hand? Possibly. But something I'm a bit more confident on is that these two characters match up pretty well to the characters we see in these stone carvings from the first official trailer for Tears of the Kingdom, which can get a little bit confusing, but just look at the footage here. You can see that this lady looks very much like the Zelda-like character here, except we know that this isn't our Zelda or our modern Zelda because this is clearly from a time long ago. But when we look at this other not-so-human-like character, it matches up to our goat man. It's got the long ears, it even has this weird third-like eye around the forehead, the both of them, and the adornments and garbs around the torso shoulder area look fairly comparable. So I think this is the same character, and I think both of them are important, but they're also from the past. But then you might ask, but Zelda is with this character in the trailer, right? I think so. They don't show the head, but they show the hand, which looks like Link's hand, and also the garb seem to match up. So there's a few possibilities here. One is that this character simply has made it throughout time and is just that old, or somehow was held in stasis, not too different from how Link and Zelda were held in some level of stasis in that 100-year slumber in Breath of the Wild. But the other is that Zelda is interacting with this character because she was sent to the past. And at first, I really wanted to doubt this idea of time traversal in this way, because I wanted them to do something different. And I was excited about Recall because that's different, that's cool. Just straight up going back in time like we did in Skyward Sword and in Ocarina of Time, I'm not sure I'm in love with that idea. But the Recall element already changes things up a lot, and we're not seeing exactly how this is done yet. It may not even be time travel. That said, as I go on with some more of this evidence, I think it becomes fairly compelling. So in this scene where we see Zelda falling down and Link fails to catch her, her hip glows gold, maybe having to do with the Sheikah Slate, and her hand glows gold. And in my initial analysis, I thought this was related to the Triforce, except the problem with that is that the Triforce was used on Zelda's right hand. This is her left hand, and it's also clenched. So many have been thinking that somehow Zelda got hold of a tear while Link and Zelda were exploring the underground area before they ran into Mummy Ganon. And it's been theorized that this is when she goes back in time. To save herself, she somehow goes back in time thanks to this tear she's holding. And what makes this more believable is that when we take a look at the tear in the trailer, it has the same symbol as recall. So this may go back to what I've been saying. Recall is the center of it all. When they show the shot of Zelda holding the tear, she says, "I know why I'm here. It's something only I can do." One thing that tells us is that she is somewhere that she didn't expect to be. And maybe the thing that only she can do could be tied to the Master Sword. In the trailer they talk about how Link and the Master Sword are pretty important. So let's focus on Master Sword here, because there's some interesting little details. Firstly, we don't quite understand how Zelda can have the Master Sword and Link can have the Master Sword. How these events all line up is very tricky. Now, if we assume that Zelda was in the past, maybe Zelda could have somehow gotten the Master Sword before Link had it in the past. This is possible. But what you'll notice is that in all the scenes that Zelda's holding the Master Sword, it's positioned in a way where you can't see the damage. Except for one scene, I think. So in the scene where we see Zelda holding the tear in her hands, we can actually see the Master Sword lying down, maybe on some sort of altar. And if you look carefully at the very corner here in the bottom right, you can see a little darkened chip right there. And I don't think that's a shadow, because we can see the shadow to the left and it looks pretty different. That would be around where the chipping would start from what we can tell. So maybe this is still the destroyed Master Sword. So Zelda's somewhere else that's unexpected, and she's with this character that's clearly far from the past. And also at the end of the trailer she says, "Link, you must find me," so it's not easy to find her. There's gotta be some sort of separation here. But again, how the Master Sword gets to her when Link drops it and we don't see the sword falling with her is strange. Especially considering that we've seen some evidence that Link does have the Master Sword early on. So not only do we have that clip where Link is using recall holding the Master Sword, but also there's this one press release screenshot where we see Link flying down above the apparent beginning Sky Islands, and he's not even wearing a toga yet, just a Master Sword. But what throws things into more of a loop is that the trailer also has this one little piece where it shows Link drawing out the Master Sword from Korok Forest. Yet Korok Forest is nowhere to be seen in Tears of the Kingdom. It's missing from the map. We don't know what happened. Also, Link's hand is totally fine here, so this is probably a flashback. But this is what we do know. That platform that Zelda's on is very similar, if not exactly the same, as the platform that Link dives by at the beginning of the trailer, and also in that clip where he's pulling out the Master Sword while using recall. The floor matches up, the Zonai Dragon Heads match up, the waterfalls match up, the altar matches up. And this area is also actually right after Link pushes open those doors from one of the earlier trailers as well. Given that the website depicts recall as the final ability, and that we've already talked about how it's distinguished itself from the other abilities, is it a stretch to think that maybe of those 4 abilities, recall is the one obtained last? Especially when you consider that this ability would be something Link can use to get back up to the Sky Islands? Maybe. And also maybe, Link goes to his altar and there's a cutscene there where he's wearing the toga, finally he's garbed in the full toga after exploring the beginning islands, and he pulls out the Master Sword and is talking to his golden light. Maybe this golden light is somehow tied to Zelda, given that whenever she does something weird or funny, it's also depicted with a golden light. And there's some sort of exchange here, even though they're not in the same area or potentially even time. And maybe the Master Sword is sent through here in some way, through some form of time travel. I don't think it's impossible. Though if this happens, I'm not quite sure how that would fit with that final line where Zelda desperately says, "Link, you must find me." But we do know that they do have conversations with each other, because In a prior trailer, Zelda expressed to Link how she had doubt that Link would be able to defeat the forces this time around.
But Link, I am not sure you'll be able to stop him.
But what makes things even more interesting, and this I did not find on my own, so I will fully credit it here, is from Looygi Bros. I'll be linking their video in the description below, but they had this great analysis where they showed that where Zelda is, not only is it near the surface, but it's actually where the Great Plateau is, right next to the Temple of Time. Which, considering all of our discussions and theories about potential time travel here and how she's tied to it, is an interesting coincidence. Not to mention she's on a Zonai platform on the Great Plateau. Wouldn't that be an odd place for Zelda to express her frustration in hopes of Link finding her soon? Because that's a fairly easy place to find, and from what we can see of the Skylands in the beginning, they're not too far off from that area. So I think there's a level of separation here that is beyond just the basic physical world. Earlier we mentioned how there seems to be a link between this game and Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword had the time shift stones where you could create pockets of space-time where it would be in an area far into the past. Maybe something like that can happen here. What Recall is different from that, but it does allow for reversal of time, and based off what we're thinking Zelda might have done with it, is just straight up go back in time herself. Maybe she reversed herself in time or something, well then she wouldn't exist. So not exactly that either. Point being, there may be several applications for what Recall can do. It's hard to say with 100% certainty what may be going on, but I feel somewhat confident in saying this. I do believe we're going to learn more about the history of Hyrule, as suggested by the trailers, but more specifically about the initial Calamity event. The website does talk about how we're supposed to uncover the secret menace that threatens Hyrule, or discover the origins of the mysterious gloom that is plaguing the kingdom. So this may all tie together. And I also think it's clear that there's something separating Link and Zelda. What that is exactly, it might just be time. And there seems to be a lot of evidence supporting that. But also, Recall seems to be a very important ability for Link, and there may be a lot of applications that extend to the story and the gameplay. And that's what I'm excited to see. While at first I was hesitant to the idea of there being time travel because I wanted something new, from what we're seeing here, this is something new. This is something exciting, and I can't wait to figure it all out once Tears of the Kingdom comes out. But what do you guys think? What do you make of this time travel theory? Do you think Zelda's gone to the past? Do you think Recall is an ability that reverses time? Or is it something else? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.